Welcome to Juhl Media. My name is Ching Juhl. I am a filmmaker, video journalist, professional violist. Since 2020, during the COVID lockdown, I was missing my relatives, my friends, and I started this program live interviewing. And so far, we had 290 and plus a lot of people. So I would say more than 350 people joined me. And they are very talented filmmakers, musicians, entrepreneurs, activists, people from all walks of life. Today, my special guest is Savanna Washington, who is a filmmaker, film director, writer, educator, and activist. Let's welcome Savanna. Hi, Savanna.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, great to see you. And I saw you yesterday at a panel and discussion and film screening in a community. It's called MRHS and sponsored by Socially Relevant Film Festival. So tell us a little bit about yesterday's experience.
Yeah, so yesterday, what Socially Relevant Film Festival did was have a Black History Month screening at MRHS over in Morningside Gardens. And so my film and another film screened, and it was a lovely event with a great turnout.
That's great, and I enjoyed the end of the after the film discussion and Q&A, and I see the dynamics of you and introduce your film. So tell us a little bit about this film, which congratulations, you are one of the selected film in socially relevant film festival, which is a film festival this year in its 12th season. And I have participated several times and also volunteered for the festival. So tell us a little bit about this film, which is called, tell us.
Yeah, so The Greening of the Bronx, an urban garden tale. So the version that is showing at the Socially Relevant Film Festival is about a 9.5 minute version of the film and short version. And it's about Black and brown activists in the Bronx who are taking agency and making change in their community and winning. It follows a team of trainees at a program called Sustainable South Bronx, and it goes through the process of them learning to be basically green, in the green collar field, and the activism that they're doing in their community. And so this is a 9 minute version, and then the feature film version will actually be on PBS starting April 1st, in time for the Earth Day month.
Wow, congrats. That's a lot of what do you call accomplishment for your film get to play on PBS. Now, I see there's the film has many you cover many elements of the issues of New York City and New York City, especially Bronx. And how did you get into these aspects? Because they are all very kind of the similar, but then they're very different.
Yeah, I was a graduate fellow during my when I was in grad school. I was a graduate fellow at it was then the Colin Powell Center. Now it's the Colin Powell School at City College of New York. And one of my colleagues there knew about Sustainable South Bronx, and they were talking about all the wonderful work that they were doing, and but not only in the green collar job field, but in activism. And I'm from Detroit originally, and so Detroit has had this I hate to say decline, but they've had this transitional period where manufacturing jobs left. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be an amazing opportunity for there to be green collar jobs in a city like Detroit, but also all over the country. And so Sustainable South Bronx was doing that work. And what I didn't know at the time was there actually is another organization in Detroit called Green Door Initiative, and they modeled themselves after Sustainable South Bronx, and they are doing this work of green job training in Detroit. So that's how I started in, how I got interested in the project. And I went and met with the executive director, and she let me film a team that was already in the middle of their training. And I gave her a little 7-minute clip to show her what this would look like. And she liked it, and she said, "Okay, you can follow the next team that starts in the fall." And so I followed 2 teams through their whole training.
Wow, that's wonderful. And how long the whole shooting took?
Yeah,
Like,
I shot for about 4 or 5 months with the teams, but I shot for almost 2 years, because I shot the teachers, and I went and did individual interviews with different people. But so I shot for about 2 years. Yeah.
now you are a filmmaker and you do directing, you write, and tell us a little bit about your background. Like, when you were really young, you started, or your family are very artsy.
No, I think my family thinks I was switched at birth at the hospital.
Oh, that's funny.
We're very
Yeah.
practical people.
Yeah.
So when they got this kind of rebel poet artist child, they didn't know where did she come from. So literally in middle school, I started writing and doing poetry, but in high school is when it really got started, where I joined the theater group, and we had a magnet school in Detroit called Cass Tech, and it was a school where you could major in different things. It was like it was, pre-college. And so I majored in theater, and that's where it all started for me in high school. I was a theater kid, and again, doing writing, and so that's how it began.
So when did you move to New York City? Was that a huge change and excitement for you?
Yeah, I lived in California before this. I lived in LA and I lived in San Diego before this, and then, came to New York because I did want to be in the doc world, and the doc world really is New York based. And so, yes, I came to New York from California, from Detroit, actually Detroit and a few other places, but then California was a big chunk of time of my life there, and now New York.
So tell us, what does it mean to you to be a filmmaker and activist? Do you think you spread or telling stories through your message, through your passion to change the situation of, society, I guess? So tell us a little bit how you became a activist and filmmaker.
For me, there's always been this activist blood in me. I think I came up in the times where people were just in the streets, and like in the 70s, and there was just a lot of activism, a lot of momentum, and I grew up at a time where it really felt like there was this rising tide that was floating all boats. That I love to tell the story about my mother was a secretary, and the secretaries aren't even considered blue collar; they're considered pink collar.
Never heard of it. Pink
So
color.
secretaries, waitresses, yeah, they're considered pink collar. But my mother bought her house on her secretary job, but it was because she worked for Chrysler, and she was paid a livable wage, and with insurance for her kids, and so she was able to buy her house, which was amazing. But almost everyone on my block owned their house. They all worked at one of the plants, one of the factories. That's why I say my parents don't know where I came from. But yeah, I was just poet child. This is back in the day when you go and get one of those good government jobs,
Yeah.
and or you see if you're on a very steady pace. And then my dad was an immigrant. He's from Jamaica, and so in the immigrant culture, you come and the next generation, the first generation comes here and they just work hard, and then the next generation becomes doctors and lawyers. So again, they didn't know, they would have accepted teacher, but yeah, I eventually did become a teacher. But yeah, again, wasn't quite clear on this whole artist thing. But yeah, so the that my activism, I feel like I'm an activist, and I actually use filmmaking, this creative part of myself, as just an extension of my activism. Yeah, as a teacher, I consider myself an activist as a teacher. I think one of the most activist things you can do is give a person agency over their life. Right. So I think of teaching as a radical act, right? It's just where you empower people to go out and be in the world in an empowered way. That's activism.
Thank you. That's so profound. And I also very respect teachers. They're not only giving knowledges to people, and they are in charge. They are the speaker. I think of being a teacher, I was a professor and teacher for a while,
Yeah.
and you are in control, right? And you nurture people also, and helping them to understand. And so a teacher is a great job. Now, speaking of activists, that activism, this month we still have few days left, and is Black History Month. And do you have any messages for us? You see, from decades ago to now, are we better at discrimination to people with colors?
I think to start off with, when we look at Black History Month, is to remember that there's Black history, whether it's no matter whose history we're talking about, in terms of the people who have come here, whether it's Asian American history or Native American history, it's all American history. And that's what's so troubling about this drive to make to banish history, to banish different people's history, because it's all American history. It's how we became the country we became, and it's how we can become a better country, if we look at the 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 mistakes that we've made, and look at how we can fix them. Um, the to bury history is just to bury is almost to bury history is almost to bury the future, because you never get past what happened, because you never look at it and reconcile it. So I think that's the first thing, is that there's all this feeling of like, it's Black history is a particular thing. It is a particular thing, but it's also American history too. And I think that one of the challenges we have in this country too around race is that there's this feeling of who gets to be an American, and everyone who's come here, everyone who except Native Americans, are all immigrants. We all come from somewhere else, and so everyone should have the banner of being an American. Everyone has made contributions. Everyone has sweat and toil and blood and tears and joys and children and contributions that have made this country what it is. And one of the things that it's done, and that's the thing I love about living in New York. We're cranky a little, but we all figure out how to live together. And I think it's just this great example. And one of the things, lastly, I'll just say, one of the things that studies have found is that communities that have a large influx of immigration are refreshed, and they grow and thrive more by having immigration as part of their DNA. And so people wonder why New York is such an amazing city. It's because of that. It's because of these people who come in and help us see the world. Every time another group comes in, they help us see the world in a different way. And I think that's the lesson of what looking at each other's history can do for us, is it can help us see our see our world in new ways, but also to just it's broadening. And can we just talk about the food?
Oh yeah, indeed. Yeah, I love New York City. For one thing is all the smell of the different foods, right?
Yeah,
And I love Indian food, Thai food, of course, Chinese food, and
yeah,
and Turkish food, and yeah, it's the beauty. And walk on 125th Street in
Yeah.
Harlem. Yeah, that's where, I live very close to there, and I understand pretty close to you too.
Yeah,
And
yeah, we live very
yeah,
close together, yeah.
yeah, it's a versatile of the culture and different people, and you know different colors, and that is the beauty of New York City. Yeah. So now I was very intrigued by your project a few years ago. It's called Playing Frisbee in North Korea. So tell us a little bit of why Korea and what you do over there.
Yeah, that was an accident. That was nothing that was ever on my radar. I would say I'm
Ah,
just a little blue collar girl from Detroit. I mean, what do I know about North Korea?
yeah.
And so again, when I was a Colin Powell Fellow, General Powell had a reunification conference my last year of school of grad school. And he brought people in from all over the world for this conference. And one of the things I learned was that in North Korea, that no one would give any food aid to North Korea. And so the U.S. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the agency escapes me right now. But there was an agency that was trying to bring food aid just for children 2 and under and for lactating mothers into North Korea. So it was a very targeted group of people. And no one would give food aid for this population. And it was so distressing to me. I said, who are we as human beings that we can't feed children and breastfeeding mothers? And so I asked someone there, I said, if I did a little short film to just show like the humanity of the North Korean people, um, uh, and would that do you think that would help? And they said, yeah, that's a great idea. And so I talked to the executive director of the Powell Center, and I said, do you mind if I just ask for some cards and see if I can start, maybe just interviewing, ask him to set up some interviews. And he said, yeah, absolutely, and tell them that we're behind you on this. The Powell Center is behind you on this, and that's how it started. And it grew from there. And they eventually gave me some seed money the seed money that they gave me is the money that got me to North Korea. So I spent a week in North Korea and I spent about a month in South Korea filming.
So you can get away being American in North Korea. Like, are there a lot of rules and a lot of hoops you have to jump?
So the first thing you have to do is you have to travel through an agency that is accredited through North Korea, and there's only 2 or 3. And so the one I went through was Young Pioneer Tours, and so so once you go with an accredited agency, they do all the paperwork. On behind the scenes, and then that's how you get in. So you have to go with a tour group that is affiliated with North Korea.
And are you allowed to share a little bit other than the film, like film material? Like, were you like shocked by the one of the few communist country left in the world? Like anything like striking to you is so unfamiliar to you as American.
Yeah, I think one of the things that happened was that we actually had to walk across a bridge into North Korea from China. And it was so surreal because you go literally from the 21st century, and then you walk across this bridge, and it really is like you're going back in time. And so one of the there weren't a lot of cars because we weren't in Pyongyang. We were in the second and third largest cities, and then in the outskirts of there. And so you see people who they walk everywhere, or they still use ox carts. I mean, the first day I remember just counting ox carts, and there were just dozens and dozens of ox carts. But it was like I went from the 2000s into like back to the 1950s. It really was this throwback in time, and I think that was really surprising to me.
Wow. No, not much cars, not much fancy bikes
No, yeah,
or
there's no
scooters.
right, exactly right. Yeah, there's like, the regular pedal bicycles that you see,
Uh-huh.
but the cars are really for, the wealthy there and for government officials.
And food is good, right?
And if you think of like a kind of a simple diet, we ate a lot of like corn. I think it's more like maize than corn. Boiled eggs, some salad kinds of things. So we have very basic, simple meals.
Oh, so I was thinking Korean food is like Korean food in New York City, not the same.
Right, no, no, not in North Korea because they don't, on the ground, it's still a very poor country.
Mm.
Yeah. So not so everyday not for everyday people, even for the tour groups. And I'm sure we were still eating much better than than the people who live there. I remember one day I just asked for a second cup of coffee. We were at breakfast and I had a cup of coffee and asked for a second, and they didn't have a second cup of coffee. Yeah.
So what is the people's lodging situation like? Is your hotel comparable to standard of cheap hotel in United States, or worse?
It's just if you go back to like 1950 and you just think, just very old vintage, very simple. Sometimes none of the hotels we stayed in had hot running water, and some of them didn't have water. They would bring in little buckets, little plastic buckets of water, and we would just, scoop water and use water. So in these hotels, and we were only the second tour group. We were in this tour called the Northeast tour, and we were only the second tour group that they had opened this section up to. So they really weren't used to tours. So I think some of these hotels have been closed for a really long time. But to walk in and there's just no running water. But if you just think kind of 1950s vintage, basic, iron beds, and yeah, so it clean, well kept, but just very basic. Yeah, and again, just very vintage. Just think vintage, but it's just because of they don't have the money or the resources, and it wasn't. I'm sure it wasn't a priority because there weren't tourists in these areas anymore.
And I know you went there to make a film, to shoot, to work. And how does it affect you? Like, uh, were you just accept it is, or were you a little bit concerned about certain issues?
I think the once they told us that we actually could film, right? Because they didn't know if you can't go there if you're a filmmaker or a journalist. And so when we all came off the tour, we started realizing that, oh yeah, like I was a filmmaker, there was somebody else who was a journalist, or we were all kind of undercover. So you're not supposed to go in if you're a filmmaker. Like I could never get back in, right? Not that at this point I couldn't go back. It just wouldn't be safe for me. But yeah, so they let us film, but we had minders all the time.
Wow. Should we play a trailer
Sure.
about this film,
Yeah.
playing
Absolutely.
frisbee in North Korea? All right, so let me share the screen. Here we go. And share. Okay.
That's not mine. Oh, that's Biff. Okay, go ahead. No, no, keep going. I'm sorry. That's right. Biff put this on at the beginning of one of theirs one time. Sorry, my bad. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Welcome to PPRK.
The United Nations says 6 million North Koreans, a quarter of the population, could be at risk of starvation.
Well, to begin with, North Korea is a very small country, highly mountainous. There's not much land area which they can produce grains.
According to the United Nations, the food situation there is better now than it has been for many years. But North Koreans speaking freely in China paint a dramatically different and alarming picture.
The impact of food shortage when you don't have enough food, and then what comes next is malnutrition.
So the state has taken it upon himself to distribute the basic cereal ration to the people.
State rations aren't being distributed. Even soldiers go hungry.
The government is not seen as the provider of the livelihood.
There's not enough rice, then people go on to corn. Even there is not enough. So the worst case scenario, people have to find something else to survive. In some cases, they opted to find something in the forest, making grass porridge out of grass.
According to UN estimates, almost half the children in one province, Ryanggang, are stunted from malnutrition. Even in the showcase capital, 1 in 5 kids are stunted.
There is no famine in North Korea. What you have is a chronic situation in which the current agricultural practices, the excessive focus on self-reliance, the Juche philosophy, make it such that the agriculture does not produce enough food for the people.
Now you may ask, well, if they can't get the ration from the government, they might as well go and buy it. Well, that's exactly the problem, because it's illegal to trade rice and maize in the market.
Because we are talking about a very brutal police state.
And if the state doesn't provide it, well, then it's not there.
Yeah, that's thank you.
Beautiful. So, yeah, I'm removing this. Yeah, and tell us a little bit about the festival. So this is the festival's, I guess, the trailer on their logo, right?
Oh, so this one with playing frisbee in North Korea. That one played at the Buffalo International Film Festival, and actually ironically, it played in 2018, even though they had it up in there, accepted in 2017, but it wasn't quite ready, so we put it on in 2018. But yeah, so I made this film festival run in 2018 to about 2020, and then it's been on PBS it started on PBS and it's been on 2 years, so fall 2023. It started on PBS, and if people want to see it, they can go to PBS Passport and get it on demand. If they have a PBS Passport membership, they can get on, and it still plays around the country. But if they want to see it on demand, they can see it on PBS Passport.
Wow, awesome! And can I ask you, from filmmaker point of view, is how do a film get into PBS?
So there's different ways to apply to PBS. There are the ITVS has a grant strand, so there's some grant strands you can get on. There's also groups like CAM, the Chinese Center for Asian American Media, Firelight Media, Black Public Media. There's another one for Indigenous filmmakers. So there's different affinity groups that work with filmmakers that help channel people into PBS. And so there's a lot of different ways to get onto PBS, and which is great. And the thing that's good about them is that if you have a good story, they will take they will accept the film. They've been just such an amazing supporter of documentary films throughout for decades now. So they're just an important resource for filmmakers.
There's a special minutes required, right? Like 57 minutes or something? Or
Yeah,
shorter?
exactly. Yeah. So they have, I think it's like 26:46, 56:46, and then 1:26:46, something like that. It's some very specific times. Yeah.
All kinds of possibility, not just one.
That's right. Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah. So now, what is your next or current project? Now your film, are on PBS or will be on PBS, and then what is the current work?
So again, the Greening of the Bronx, an urban garden tale, the 60-minute version, the feature film version of this will start on April 1st on PBS and World, and it'll have nationwide release. and it'll definitely play here in New York. Several of the PBS stations have already said that they would be interested in running it.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Can we play a trailer of that?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
Greener of the Bronx. Okay, so let me set up. How was the audio? How was the audio? Is it okay?
Yeah, it was okay on my end.
Yeah. StreamYard. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. 30-second. Okay,
Yeah.
guys. Just concentrate.
Our city and state, they were just continuing to use our community as a regional sacrifice zone that wealthier and usually whiter communities in New York City could afford to avoid.
Living in a safe, clean neighborhood that has environmental justice, not environmental racism, should be a right and not a privilege. So I say this, why move out of my neighborhood when I can just stay here and make it better?
Unfortunately, some of the AI generated
It is?
captioning.
Oh.
So yeah, some of the AI generated closed captioning wasn't quite. I didn't quite get all of them.
Oh yeah.
It's okay.
Oh,
yeah, but you get a chance to. So that's the promo the for public. Yeah.
Let me just.
So promo. Yeah.
So these days AI can do a lot of things for us, right?
Yeah.
And you just
there's a part of me that's like, okay, you know what? Even AI doesn't get everything right all the time.
Yeah.
You still need human beings.
Yeah, I made a film has I have to put a lot of what do you call caption on it, and
Right.
with a company, I'm sure they use AI. So
Right.
after that, I spent hours and hours of correcting, their writing. Yeah, so
Yeah, I
if
used the
they
AI generated transcription site for some of this film, and it was amazing how how much of especially in some of the early transcripts where they didn't understand like climate change and they weren't familiar with the words, but it was interesting as I could see the program learning as I was going along, like they started getting things right, or started improving. If I corrected them, I could see the system improving. But yeah, I was like you. I still had to make a lot of corrections.
we have our audience member. Thank you for being with us, and we have people listen to us. And this one movement says, Savanna, what is your next project? Yeah, I interrupted you earlier. So what is your next project?
Yeah, so this one again, so Greening of the Bronx will run on start running on April 1st. And the next project, actually, I've finished a fiction film. And it has just been in the works forever, and it's just been on the back burner because I've had these other two films that I needed to work on. And I always feel like my pieces are always these big ensemble pieces. I come from a really huge family, and so my pieces tend to be these big ensemble pieces. So there is a fiction film that I've done called Finding Home, and that actually will come out later this year. And not quite sure what that's going to look like and where it's going to play yet. So I'm in conversation with some people about that, about what this film looks like. But it's basically a story. It's kind of roughly based on Cinderella. The lead is called Ella, and she's a jazz singer, and of course it's New York. And she has an evil stepmother who puts her father away. And so her cranky and cantankerous neighbors, who are from all different walks of life, decide they're going to help her. And she's like, no, please don't. And they're like, no, we've got this. So it's just this idea of like how we all live together. I said to somebody one time, I said, you know what? This is the world I live in New York, like with all these different people, all the different types of people. And it's just like, I want to see that on screen. So Peppermint, the drag queen, is in it. There's another woman from India who's in it, who's lovely, and she's always, her character is always just very lovely and peace and light. Then there's another woman who just cusses at everybody all the time in another language. I mean, it's just fantastic. So it's so much fun. And so yeah, so it's I'm looking forward to for people to seeing that. And it's a romantic comedy, but again, it's just one of these that just kind of I believe like my job is just to help us, introduce people to one another. So it's just yeah, another one of those kind of films with a large ensemble cast of just yeah, interesting people.
So I noticed when you go to North Korea to film that piece, and if you have to hide around not being obvious, did you shoot with a smartphone?
No, I used it was a prosumer camera because I didn't want to take a professional camera because it would be too obvious.
Yeah.
So it was just a prosumer camera, and I had a little wide angle lens I screwed onto the front of it. So it looked a little weird, but they didn't really know. And so that's what I shot with.
And what about audio?
Yeah, audio was just the onboard microphone from the camera, and it actually was a really good one. So I really lucked out on that. And when I did interviews, I mic'd everybody, but for just capturing like that verite footage in North Korea, I just used that little Canon Vixia, and it worked out fantastic because it didn't make them feel uncomfortable. Because if I had put a little shotgun microphone on top, it would have looked too professional.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that because I had one, but I couldn't use it.
So you can use an external microphone and discreetly put it on, right? Doesn't have to be too obvious.
No, that's it. I used the onboard microphone.
Onboard, okay.
Onboard, yeah, I used the one that
Oh.
the camera. Yeah, the one that's built into the camera. Yeah.
Oh wow! May I ask what model is that?
Oh, Canon Vixia, and so it's a
Oh,
prosumer
yeah,
camera.
I have that. Yeah, Canon Vixia. I have.
Yeah.
What do you call it? I have two of them. Canon Vixia 4 or 3, one of it. Yeah, yeah, it's good. It uses tape actually.
Yeah, this one was digital. This one was all.
Oh, so improved.
The thing that was great was that it had an internal memory,
Yeah.
and it also used SD cards.
Yeah.
If you didn't know about the internal memory, because they checked all our they checked our stuff before we left.
Oh.
And so they wanted to look. I had over 500 clips, so he wasn't going to sit there and look at all of my footage. So he just looked at the thumbnails of all my footage. So it just looked like I had I don't know, hundreds of clips of trees. And so what he didn't realize was I would shoot something like a tree, and then when they weren't looking, I would turn and shoot what I wanted, and then I would turn back.
Oh, so smart! Wow, that's awesome. Yeah,
so
I was thinking.
So they couldn't find, and if you didn't know that it had internal memory, you couldn't find it. So I shot stuff on the internal memory, and then so they couldn't find it.
And then that gentleman, he was brave, right? I mean, how do you convince him to talk to you?
Which one?
The guy, the guy was in front
so
of
the guy who was in the trailer, he's an expert, a North Korean expert who lives in Washington, D.C.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. Yeah, the only North Koreans who would speak to me were in South Korea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the only North Koreans I could get to talk to me were already out of the country.
Oh, okay, yeah. Otherwise, they're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, and and the film is called Playing Frisbee in North Korea because we did eventually play Frisbee in North Korea with the village, and the next day was tense. The minders are because they will inform on each other, and so the driver was not having it. We just thought it was just this lovely day of playing Frisbee with people. And the next day was really tense. We couldn't go to the bathroom without somebody. Yeah, they did not want because they felt like they lost control over us, and so it was a little scary the next day. I mean, we everybody was lovely on the tour with seasoned travelers, so we calmed them down, got just kind of got them back, but it was it was tough. It was tense the next day.
So speaking of a few communist country left, and I think China is one of them, and also Cuba. Would you ever be interested in filming in Cuba?
I think that stories come to me in interesting ways. I think what happens, like in a country like Cuba, like I don't speak the language, so I don't know how I could do justice to it. I know a filmmaker, Pam Sporn, who is fluent in Spanish. Her husband's Cuban, and so I think she's shot down there. So that she would be a better fit for that. Somebody like that would be a better fit for that. So than me. So for me, it's what kind of how what comes across what comes across my radar. Like right now, there's a project that somebody brought to me, and a company brought to me, and they want us to collaborate on. And I won't say anything about it right now because we're still talking about it and in the development phase. But this one, it is something, and it has to interest me, and it has to be part of my activism. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. I don't just do documentary work just to do it. It's like if you look on our website, creatively-speaking-films.com, like you'll see a lot of climate stuff right now because our Harlem Earth Day is coming up, and it's going to be at the Harlem School of the Arts on May 3rd from 10 to 3. And so come out; it'll be free. It's a lovely family-friendly day. And the film will be screening there that day, and another film from the Hip Hop Caucus will be screening there also that day. And so you see a lot of like some pieces I've done, produced some short pieces I've done on COP28 on the climate. And so, but again, I feel like that's part of my activism. So it has to marry like something that I'm really passionate about with the filmmaking. It's not just I go out and look at a story and go, oh yeah, I'll do a story on cute dogs. I mean, there's nothing wrong with cute dogs, and I like them a lot. I have a series of photos on cute dogs, but it's not that I don't would necessarily do a documentary on it, right?
Now, you have a degree from the City College of New York and in directing. And tell us a little bit, what is a duty, what does director do in the film world?
Yeah, on the fiction side, what the director does is to help the cast and crew. They hold the vision for the film, for the cast and crew, and the production designers, and help to bring the story from the script onto the screen, right? And to have everything around it, whether it's the clothes or the cars or the settings, that all have a similar vision. All have the same vision. So like when you think of a movie like Barbie, right? I mean, that is a movie that had high style. And so someone's really holding the vision for that film, right? On the documentary side, what directors do is we shoot a story. We look for characters, because they always say in the fiction side, the story happens on the page, and on the documentary side, the story happens in the editing room. And so whenever we are doing a documentary, working in that area, we're shooting, and when we get to the editing room, that's when we start putting the film together, and the director helps guide and mold that story in the editing room.
Well explained. Excellent. And while you study the directing, do they you have courses on like a filming, right? On how to film stuff and like shooting. Have you taken that? And sometimes when you go out with your team, do you shoot as well?
Yeah, on the documentary side, I pretty much shoot all the footage myself. And mostly because my documentaries cost almost nothing to make, because I shoot them, I go out and I do everything. And they just wouldn't have gotten made. I mean, I didn't have the money to take a team to North Korea with me. So if I couldn't have shot that myself, then it wouldn't have happened. Same thing when I was doing Greening of the Bronx. If I just wasn't able to pick up, I was teaching then. So I was whenever I would see their schedule, I would just fit my filming into my my teaching into my schedule that didn't conflict with my teaching schedule. So yes, I shoot all of my documentaries myself, and that's just a cost function. But on the fiction side, I never shoot the fiction stuff, because I'm working with the actors, and I can't split my brain like that. So somebody has to be doing that technical stuff for me. And the nice thing is with fiction is just it's nice it really is good to have other ideas there and to bounce things off people. But yeah, so I'm solely a director when I'm doing fiction stuff, but I'm the director and camera person when I'm doing documentary.
Now, how important is to enter film festivals? And after your film is done, and do you recommend all filmmakers to search for film festivals? Are there any timing issues, and which one to apply for? Do you have any suggestions for filmmakers?
Yes, I think nowadays there's so many film festivals, it can get so expensive. And also the film festivals themselves get flooded with a lot of entries to really, we all use Film Freeway, filmfreeway.com. And to really go on and narrow your search for festivals that are very specific to what you do. So for this film, I really only applied to like places like Socially Relevant Film Festival. It got into Global Peace Film Festival. So festivals like that, I did a very narrow search, and then give yourself a budget, and then stop there. Because the thing that's great about film festivals is that it can get your film attention, but it also is the filmmakers, if you can, go to the festival because it's a great community. And one of the things that happens in particular documentary work is that we tend to work in silos. We just work on our projects by ourselves, or in really tiny teams. And so the nice thing about what happens when you go to a film festival is you have all of this community around you. And it's really lovely to be, especially when it's something like Socially Relevant Film Festival, where they have a very specific purpose, right? They're there to help change the world. And so you're there with like-minded people, and it's just a really amazing space to be in, and it's so affirming for a filmmaker. So you really do get a twofer. You get your film to get seen and get exposure, but you also get to be in this amazing community.
That's true. That's how I met you, through a Socially Relevant Film Festival. And by the way, the festival starts March 11th to 16th, and in New York City, in different locations. We're going to put links of Savanna's film, The Greening of the Bronx, and an Urban Garden Tale, in the description. Yeah. And now, speaking of expensive, and I agree with you, when people say when you budget your film, you have to budget your festival in it. Is normally, I don't know now, I apply for 2020 my film, but normally it's like a $30, as cheap as $30 per entry, as more as like 110 or $20, depending on when you apply for, right? The
That's
earlier, the cheaper, right?
That's right. That's right. And the thing to know is that if you're applying to festivals outside of the United States, a lot of them are a lot cheaper than they're $10, $15. If you're applying to festivals outside of the country. And there are a lot of really good festivals, good regional festivals that give you a lot of bang for your buck. But yeah, in the United States, it can start at $30, $40, $50 and go up to $100, $120. So you can imagine if you have 20 entries at $100 each, I mean, you're out $2,000. So it adds up really quickly. And the larger festivals, it has to be said, and I love them. I go to a lot of them. My film was in Woods Hole Film Festival. I was in playing Frisbee in North Korea was in some great festivals. But it again, they get so many entries that you really want to make sure that you tailor it to very, very narrowly to festivals that you think have the greatest chance. And then put a cap on it, because like with this short film, I knew the film was going to be on PBS. And so I only picked about 10 or 12 festivals, and I capped my budget at $250. That was it. And so it wound up being in 3 festivals, and I'm like, yeah, that's perfect.
Wow, that's wonderful. Good to know. Yeah. And now you are teaching. Are you still teaching, or you have been teaching? Tell us a little bit about your teaching. Yeah. What are you teaching?
Yeah, so I have taught, in mostly what I teach is production. I teach people how to use how to use equipment, how to use camera, lights, and sound. So I teach an intro class, and it really is to just help people, help students to like, just get on their feet with the equipment. So that's what I teach now. I've taught some more advanced classes. I've taught some grad level classes in media management. Because I used to be a production accountant. I used to do a lot of accounting and bookkeeping and office management work for like boutique talent agencies, and I have my own, actually I have my own little bookkeeping business, but I would go and I had a circuit of several clients, and most of them were like small boutique talent agencies that really couldn't have a full-time person, but just needed somebody like one day a week or something. So I did a lot so I do a lot of management kind of classes sometimes. But the class that I also loved was I created an activism class. And so I had taught that at the grad level at New School. And so I haven't taught that in a while, but that was that's a really one of my favorite classes too, to teach the next generation of activism, the next generation how to be activists.
So what would you tell today's students who are in the film industry, and with the study can be very long, 3 4 4 years, and when they come out, the employment situation may not be ideal, right? There's more people, talent people, less job. And how would you guide them? What would you tell them? And yeah, what kind of message do you tell them?
So the first thing is that they're living in this really dynamic period. That's fantastic. Back in the day when I started, I mean, you had to go through gatekeepers. You really had to go through some sort of studio or, television studio or film studio to get anything done. Some of it was because it was just so prohibitively expensive. I mean, one of the best things that ever happened for us was this move to digital. So it just reduced the cost tremendously. So that's the advantage that that people have today starting out. The other advantage too is that they can be content creators. They don't even necessarily have to do feature length or do irregular television length. They can do whatever length they want. Insincere started as Awkward Black Girl, a YouTube short series, a short series on YouTube. That's how Issa Rae started. But there is money to be made, and that's why when there was talk about TikTok going away, there are people who are making really good money monetizing their content on social media. So there's a lot more opportunity for people to make money in non-traditional ways. And just a little setup in your apartment, like if I put a green screen behind me right now, and with the light I have, and a couple of really inexpensive microphones, and almost just my phone, I mean, I can have that. That's a studio. I mean, for under a few $100s, you can really just create a studio in your house and become a content creator. So that's the advantage they have. And there's a lot more channels too. There's just a lot more work out there. There's a lot of opportunity to be on the crew side also. So people should never, I started in the industry as a assistant sound engineer. In a recording studio when they still use 2-inch Ampex tape. I don't know if anybody remembers that. We used to have these massive rolls of tape. I mean, you almost had to be like a superhuman person to like pick up these massive rolls of tape. I mean, you couldn't carry 5 of them at a time because they weighed 50 pounds or something. They're like 10 pounds each or something crazy. But that's how I started in the industry. So there's always all the things on the crew side too that people should remember, like being a cinematographer, being a sound person, being a sound mixer, being a colorist. There are a lot of different tech things that are available to people, and they should and to check into that too. Not everybody has to be a director, or has to be a writer, or has to be a producer. There's just a lot of other ways to make really good money in this field.
So true, so true. There's more opportunity, a lot of streaming out there, right? Can see your work. Yeah. We're almost at the ending, and where can people find you?
You can find me at creatively-speaking-films.com, and on Instagram, creatively_speaking on Instagram.
Great. Yeah, I think it's in the description below. Yeah. So anything, thank you so much, Savanna Washington. And do you have anything add on before we end our session?
I think for one of the challenges we're having with being with activists right now is everything feels very overwhelming because of the kind of the political environment we find ourselves in. And so the first thing I would say to people is get some rest. And then, because that's important, because it is a lot happening. And then the next thing is to then start to find affinity groups that you can work with, and look at what do you want your activism to be. It can be from the smallest thing to the largest thing. It doesn't have to be big, but find like an affinity group. Like it can be, even just like a literacy group, or anti-incarceration group, whatever it is that is your passion. Find a group that is doing that work and join them. You don't have to do this by yourself. And there was a great line that Lena Horne said when they were going through the civil rights battles in the 1960s. She said, I had to be around other people who were brave. And she said, it didn't mean that we were all brave all the time, but sometimes when I wasn't brave, then somebody else was, and they could be brave for me. So, that's why it's really nice to be in groups with people, because we need each other. And the last advice is, and if all else fails, bake some cookies.
Make some dumplings. And I like what you said yesterday at the panel. You said protest. Tell us what you said. Protest. Like if you want to protest has many different format. Remember you said that?
Oh, right.
Do you remember?
No, I'm spacing right now because my brain.
No. Okay, I repeat what you said. Something like that. You said protest doesn't need to be really big. Protest can be one person. Yeah, right? You said.
That's true. That's right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, protest can just be one person. I knew somebody who she just had some rage and some chalk, and she used to write the hashtag Stop Rape Educate, and that would took you to a Facebook page of resources. And so if you just have some rage and some chalk, get out there and you can chalk resources on the sidewalk for people. Right. So it doesn't have to be, a protest can be a lot of different things. Yeah. And a protest can be art.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to also thank our audience join us online or listening or in person writing comments. And thank you. And this session will be live after we end this. So if not live, you can hear the replay after we leave here. Okay. All right. So thank you so much, and go to see film and socially relevant film festival, and go see Savannah's film. And until next time, we see you again.
Thank you so much, Ching. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Let's get together. We're pretty close.
Yeah.
Bye. So you're gonna click leaving studio in the bottom.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Go ahead in the bottom.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us.